Institute, Andishe Online-Germany, AOG. Themes from the University. Theme 12. Ostad Elahi's Principles of Faith. Part 1. Ostad Elahi, 1895–1974, summarized the principles of his convictions in the form of a poem. Long after he passed away, this poetry, engraved on several crystal tablets, was first presented to the public in 1995 at the celebrations and symposium that took place in some universities and academic centers around the world to mark his 100th birthday. Although the aim of this article is to analyze only 3 of these principles, I will first translate the whole poem literally into German so that it is accessible to all interested parties. These principles are as follows. Ostad Elahi's Principles of Faith in the form of poetry. Do you want to know the principles of religion? These are the principles and beliefs. Choose them. Going once. Believe in God. Unique it is, unique and invisible. Has no partner, was not born, is immortal. However, this is enough to prove this is enough to describe him. Second, consider all creatures of all times as good, because no one is originally evil. Only the plot can be bad, not the perpetrator. Try to avoid the same action. Every good person in every position, you are obliged to respect. Thirdly, at any place, at any time, everything that is considered positive by sages and brings order and comfort to people, his source is from God. And you shall do it for yourself and for others, and move away from the opposite. Then any religion you choose that does not conflict with these rules is allowed, but on the condition that you follow their principles with your heart. Nur Ali explored and found this, which is the essence of all religions. 3 of these 12 verses of poetry refer to the demarcation of a true religion, making it easier to recognize the truth of any religion and filter out superstition. From the simple description and interpretation of these 3 verses in another book by Ostad Elahi, we learn that a true religion is summarized in these 3 points. 1. Pay attention to God, and speak only to Him, and share only with Him your secrets and needs. His home is our heart. 2. What you do not want for yourself, you do not have to want for others, and just as you try to drive away the damage that threatens you, try to ward off the damage that threatens others. Do to others what you want them to do to you, and strive for the benefit of others, just as you strive for your own benefit. 3. You should know why you came to this world, what you should do in your earthly life, and what will happen when you leave this world. In order to present a deeper interpretation, it is necessary to have carefully studied the works of Master Elahi and become familiar with his views in various fields. If the above conditions are met, the first paragraph can be interpreted as follows. In each religion and creed, God is defined in a specific way that ultimately satisfies the psychological needs of the followers of that religion and creed. For example, in the Shiite creed, as far as I know, there is an acceptable God who considers the belief in the guardianship of Ali, that is, the first leader of Shiites, and his 11 sons as a basic requirement for entry into paradise. Whereas the followers of the Sunni creed, namely the majority of Muslims, do not believe in this and consider this belief absurd. Some extremist Sunnis go so far as to believe that Shiites will go to hell after death because of their faith. In this respect, both groups bring examples from the Quran. At the same time, the commentators of both groups, Shiites and Sunnis, are of the opinion that the followers of all other religions, who have not converted to this religion after the emergence of Islam, are the future people of hell. On the other hand, apart from the advanced thinkers of Christianity, all the other commentators of this religion agree that the only way to salvation is the way of Jesus Christ, and whoever does not believe in Jesus will be thrown into hell after death. conception of how God thinks together with other facts has led to religious wars throughout history. Much blood has been shed, many people have been burned and killed. Countless goods have been looted, and many houses and fields have been burned in the fire of the extremist anger and hatred. All this was caused by misunderstandings of the religious principles. Either worship our God or we will destroy you and your God. This was the main reason for the apostasy from faith and the creation of the atheistic philosophical schools. To my knowledge, in the course of more than a quarter of a century of research on Ostad Elahi's works, the God defined by Master Elahi judges people accordingly in terms of their actions according to the perspective of the same religion to which they belong. The Master believed that all official religions are rooted in the origin of creation, and apart from superstition, which has been added to all religions throughout history. They all comprise the same four spiritual stages necessary to begin, go through, and complete the process of perfection. After Master Elahi's explanations in this regard, we find that the creation of all true creeds and manifestations of different religions or even atheistic considerations were all part of the original plan of creation. In this worldview, God's love is not limited to those who believe in Him, but also embraces all kinds of creatures of the whole universe, regardless of which religions they belong to or if they're godless. This means that God Himself also loves the unbelievers, takes care of their problems, and helps them at the right time in serious need. However, it must therefore be taken into account that the universe moves according to laws that cannot be understood by our limited information. A large part of Ostad Elahi's teachings consists of these rules and laws. He tried to teach them throughout his life. We will discuss and analyze these topics in the following articles. We can summarize the first of the principles of faith as follows. There is only one God. From the beginning of creation, God knew what He was doing and what would happen in the course of time. This is a God who created the entire universe according to eternal and unchanging laws through the system of cause and effect, which is still in the expansion phase, and who has partly left the fate of intelligent beings like mankind to themselves. This is a God who, in spite of the faults of His creatures, the result of which have always plagued them, hears their cries and, like a merciful father or a loving mother, takes their hands, helps them out of hell, and puts them back on the right path. This is a God who loves all of His creation and who guarantees their living beings an absolutely unlimited freedom, and so that they can attain this and use it with full power, He has allowed them the process of perfection. This is a God who knows that all creatures, in returning to the origin of creation through perfection, have become so much wiser and more experienced that they are now able to enjoy all the incredibly pleasant privileges of this environment. To internalize the second of these principles is not difficult. All we need is to focus on the cause and practice of this principle, but to gain a deep understanding of it, we need to hear the phrase, "What you don't want for yourself, you don't have to want for others," repeatedly, so that it is fully institutionalized in your soul and meaning becomes one of its outstanding attributes. In the early stages, it is not easy for a seeker of truth, even if he really wants to do so, because the nafs, ego, opposes it and, like a philosopher, makes up dozens of philosophical excuses to prevent it. Therefore, to facilitate spiritual perfection, God has guaranteed man 50,000 earthly years plus many years in the afterlife so that he will not be pressured by lack of time. In every life, every person should put the principle discussed above into practice, even if at the beginning the frequency and concentration is low. In this respect, each person must take the boundaries and priorities from a reliable source to implement the principle, "What you don't want for yourself, you don't have to want for others," correctly and appropriately. In other words, this principle must become the motto of our actions in life on earth so that we do it spontaneously. Those who have tried to fulfill this human duty know that in this process, the soul has to fight hard against the animal nafs, ego, in order to overcome them. In any case, the completion of the perfection process depends on doing this correctly and on time. The third principle consists of 3 parts. 1. Knowing why you came into this world. Ostad Elahi discusses in a part of his teachings the reason for the creation of the material and semi-material worlds, saying that these environments act as a laboratory for souls created from the origin of creation, such as the heavenly soul, in the material and immaterial dimensions of the infinite universe. Through the process of making mistakes, paying for mistakes, and gaining experience, the soul attains the maturity necessary to return to its origin. Therefore, one can simply say that the soul was sent to this earthly world to attain perfection by becoming familiar with contradictions and discrepancies and by gaining experience of their effects. Through this process, a soul becomes mature and strong and even perfect. 2. What should you do in this earthly world? In short, according to the teachings of Ostad Elahi, every human being is obliged to learn and follow the appropriate instructions according to his spiritual rank, so that by completing this stage and acquiring the relevant effect, he can reach a higher stage. If one does not know what level he is at and thus what he should do, the application of the second of these principles is as effective as a proper key to all doors. Treat others as you would like to be treated by them. Quote from Ostad Elahi. Therefore, it is excellent if a person can take appropriate instructions for his level of soul from a reliable source that shows him what is and what is not allowed from a divine perspective. Otherwise, if the source is not reliable, there's a danger that human thoughts will be mixed with divine instructions. This means that if a person does not know how to pray to God, it is not so important. But if he does not fulfill the above-mentioned human duty, namely, the quote from Ostad Elahi, the rate of spiritual growth decreases. Of course, if he does both, it is better. The priority is that human rights must be taken into account, as well as the rights of other creatures. 3. Where will you go after death? Through the teachings of Ostad Elahi at the University of the Perfection Process, a student learns that all souls are separated from their bodies after death and transferred to the afterlife through a quantum tunnel. The only exceptions are the souls that have reached perfection on earth. These rare souls will not go to the afterlife but will be transported directly to the source of existence where they belong. We will discuss what will happen to these souls in the afterlife in the second part of this article. From the topic discussed above, death is therefore not the end of everything, and real life will begin afterwards. These 3 basic principles that we have analyzed in this article must indeed be the main principles of any true religion. Everything else can only be secondary. In this context, Ostad Elahi adds a paragraph. It reads, every person may choose any denomination that embraces the same 3 basic principles. For this choice, however, he considers only one condition necessary and inevitable. This is, a seeker of truth must act on the principles of his personally chosen denomination or spiritual order with heart and soul and from deep faith and sincerity. Here, it is important to pay attention to one thing, which is that Ostad Elahi is talking about denominations and not religions, because each religion is made up of many denominations. And since it is not a specific religion, it can be assumed that this refers to all denominations and also to all spiritual orders that come from all the official religions of the world. When mankind deeply understands what Master Elahi offers about religion and its principles, and puts the principles he has formulated into practice, the war of religions and sects will finally come to an end, for it can be seen from this document that all true religions, denominations, and spiritual orders have their roots in the origin of creation, and they all have equal value with God. It is only necessary that the followers of each denomination follow their obligations and not only avoid the contempt of the followers of other denominations but respect them. If we assume that what has been discussed above is reasonable and acceptable, only then can we understand that all ceremonies and rituals of all different religions and all denominations are indifferent from the point of view of God. For this reason, the faith of Master Elahi, which provides a reasonable definition of religion, can be seen as a platform accessible to all, which does not reject and drive away other ways of thinking, but has the potential to support and teach all kinds of theistic and atheistic beliefs in addition to monotheistic ones. Personally, I believe that with a proper, in-depth study of Master Elahi's teachings, one can conclude that his doctrine is consistent with almost all philosophical disciplines, with the exception, of course, of dogmatism and extremism, which is not an easy matter to deal with. An important point in this regard is that what Master Elahi teaches is not just a simple statement, but part of a signpost that was prepared by God long before the Big Bang. Therefore, what he says is both logical and binding. As was mentioned at the beginning of this article, the purpose here is to give a brief and fairly straightforward interpretation of the first three of the principles of faith. In future articles we will deal with other aspects of these principles. End of the first part. In the second part we will discuss the topic, the fate of the soul after death in the afterlife. Research and investigation, Farah Mars Tabish. Sources, works by Master Elahi.